Russell Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos. Tom Pelissero reports that there is a deal in principle to send 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. In exchange for...
All right, back now with you on Total Access with breaking news out of Green Bay. We go straight to Tom Pelissero on the details of what's going on with Davante Adams, who looks like the Raiders are acquiring him from the Packers. All right.
Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Riche from the MHRT Network. So I thought I'd jump right into it and just do a quick little round of the room here. That is Coach Defense of the Lockdown Defense podcast. Down directly below is Alex Givens of Arrowhead Addict. And to the bottom right is Captain Jack Rackham. Is there an echo for anyone else?
No.
Yeah.
You hear it now? How about now?
Testing. Yeah, it's gone now. All right. Good.
I know why.
So, getting right back into it, guys, we had...
I'm only here so I won't be fine. I'm only here so I won't be fine. Okay?
I like it. I like it. I like it.
Extra stuff.
Hey, I think you earned the right to be smug. You're the world champs, you know?
And you know what? I'm going to get that one. I'm telling you, and I'm not kidding. I've walked off on one show before. If the decibel level of smugness is so horrible that I don't even get a chance to get my points out, I will freaking walk off. And because again, I'm here. I will make a comment, but the rest of that, like I said, I'm only here, so I won't be fined as I have a show for Friday, and that's the only reason why I'm really.
Oh, now the truth comes out. Oh. Aha.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for joining us, Cat. We appreciate your presence.
Mm-hmm. I do want to apologize for my beard looking as whack as it does, but I did take a nap before the show, so that's why it's all friggin'.
So you have a nap beard.
So, question with regards to everyone here that is joining us live, both a question and a comment. First off, thank you for joining. And second, if you have any questions just about the Super Bowl in general, anything you'd like us to cover on the show, go ahead and leave those comments either below the video if you're catching us after the fact, or live, leave those questions in there. We'd like to kind of cover those topics. I think there's going to be some obvious ones we're obviously going to want to go over as a group, and then there's going to be some other ones that are maybe not as obvious that we should probably go over. Obviously, Alex, let's just leave the floor to you and kind of have some comments and just overarching commentary from you in terms of what you saw, what you liked, what you didn't, since it's your team that did in fact win.
Yeah,
and then we'll go from there.
That is. They did win the Super Bowl. It's an amazing feeling. Parade today. I see a lot of clips of the dudes pretty hammered on Bud Light, Coors Light, but Chiefs King feeling great now. So now that I'm gonna get going, let me set my eggshells here to tiptoe around before we set off any tempers.
No. You know what? I you know what, Galax? I apologize. I'm just kidding. Go ahead and let it out, man. Go ahead and let it out, okay? And there was an echo, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I got my stuff on low, and there was an echo, but it's not on me.
Fair enough. I don't know where that. I don't hear anything, so whatever. And I was mostly joking around, so I don't have to apologize for that. But either way, back to what I would say is one of the better Super Bowls that we've had in pretty recent years in terms of how close it was, and like the offensive scoring. I mean, for being the number one NFC team, the number one AFC team, it lived up to the hype. There's certain moment. I mean, a lot of people picked the Eagles to win. There were certain moments in the game where it looked like the Eagles would win. Chiefs and more specifically the offense, had played the perfect second half of football, which they pretty much did. When you compare to the first half went, and it was just an all around amazing team win, historic. John, you dog. I'll to John in a sec. Either way, historic second half. My audio's daughter. Is it? Really? Wonder what's going on.
I'm just happy because it's not my friggin' audio that's something up, and you can't blame me at it.
Here, I'm gonna unmute myself and see if mute your mic real quick, Alex. So when I'm talking, I don't hear an echo anymore.
Yeah, I don't hear an echo from me either.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's good. So like Mike said, that's hilarious.
So if people don't know that, do people know who that is though? Do you know who Max Headroom is though? In the chat, do people know?
I know who Max Headroom is.
I do too. I know exactly who Max Headroom is.
See, the smugness has infected. That was the word. Infected your audio because there was so much glib smugness just oozing out. It got into your system. Literally,
is that better or no?
Literally.
Yeah, that's better.
Better.
So hold on.
Yeah.
I do think it's important that we do introduce the whole smug collection that has joined us.
My
evening.
smug army, huh?
The smug army, I think is perhaps more appropriate. I want to thank Alex's mom, Jennifer, for joining. I believe that is your mom, correct, Jennifer?
Yes, that's my mother.
Yeah, so I just want to thank Jennifer. She's joined us the last few shows. I really enjoy having some additional Chiefs fans in here and kind of having that volley back and forth. I think it's spectacular. I did see your aunt in here.
Hey, Mom, I wore pants for you. I was telling the guys I wore my shorts, so in case I had that up, I wouldn't offend you. Seriously. Ask them. I did.
That he did.
He has no qualms in going full
at all.
You know what I mean? He has no issues with that whatsoever.
At all.
Yeah.
And I've heard. And we do have. I was wondering if that was Fiance Smug, and it is in fact Fiance Smug. I appreciate you announcing yourself as well. Carol, I've heard wonderful things about you.
Finally make appearance.
Thank you for joining.
She only sits right upstairs in my living room, but I think first time she's lean.
Yeah.
I'm fan, first time listener for fiance smug, right?
Well, you know you're saying something wrong when you hear the pounding on the roof above you, and then you know you've gone wrong. Right. So Carr, it's 2 hits on the floor for shut up and change the topic, and then 1 hit on the floor for good job.
She just gave me.
There's a Morse code that you need to implement for those things.
No. Remember, it's knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want me.
Yeah.
If we're gonna go way back, let's go way.
Yeah.
So we had an interesting Super Bowl. I actually happen to agree with your analysis, Alex. Before it got super echoey on your mic, you were basically going into the fact that was probably one of the better Super Bowls we've seen in probably 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was down to the wire, neck and neck. I said as advertised for being the number 1 team from sides of the league.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Now, obviously, we would be remiss on the show if we didn't discuss the whole no-hold thing.
Hold. I mean, it's not a discussion of hold no-hold. That was a clear hold. I mean, literally, Bradbury himself said he was home. You go watch the film. I mean, any ref's gonna throw that flag. Is it shitty that it happened right then? Yeah, but like it was a ball. So I mean,
yeah.
So I think it's
Ice on the pipes, babe.
That's awesome. But Alex, I guess we may as well just get right into that piece, because that's obviously that's kind of the big talking point that really came out of the Super Bowl, in my opinion. And so I have 2 points. One, there was plenty of holds earlier in the game that were certainly far more egregious and far more impactful than that one that were not called. And 2, as an officiating crew, it is your job to set the tone and the pace for the game early on in the game. And it's also your job to not make a call like that has such an influential impact on the outcome of the game because of when it was called. So look, I'm not even saying that it wasn't a hold either. I'm only partially joking when I made a comment like that earlier. It obviously was a by the book penalty in a sense. However, it also did not truly negatively impact the play. In truth, the ball was not a great ball that was thrown by Mahomes.
But that is a matter of holding assessment. I mean, whether the ball was catchable or not is not meant for defensive holding.
Pardon me?
Whether the ball is catchable or not is not part of the assessment for defensive holding or an article penalty.
This is true, although I do wonder if that. So there is a penalty where in the rule book as written, and I can't remember which one. So
I mean, it'd be PI, like PI. Look at
yes. Sorry, you're right. Yes.
But I mean, like holding in terms of a second player on a receiver is same as offensive line. I mean, and it happens probably happens every play. And like I said, it's a creepy time that they called it, but by the letter of the law, it was a hold. And I mean, it didn't, in my opinion, change the outcome of the game. They were right there driving to run the clock out and kick a field goal and do what they were do anyways. Who knows if it doesn't hold them right there, maybe GG gets released and they score a touchdown. I mean, it could go both ways. But to, I guess, discredit.
No, whoa, hold on. I really have to interject there.
Go for it.
there's a hold that impacts the outcome of the play. And we've seen those in games before. I mean, we've even made comments about those on the show before of saying, like that hold negatively impacted the outcome of the play. That, there really actually ought to be escalators for truly egregious penalties of that nature. You cannot honestly sit there with a straight face and tell me that you think that the rounding error of the jersey movement that you saw impacted that play in any meaningful way whatsoever. Like, I'm sorry, there's just no way. Because
I'm waiting for the smirk, the effing come out.
Right. So
it's here.
Right there. Right there.
You've seen plays where guys' jerseys have been held, and then the jersey stretches out, and it's so blatantly egregious that you're just like, that's bad. That was not what we saw in that game.
That's not how you the game. That's not what goes into. They tell them only call egregious stuff. And like, I'm not denying it was a bad time for it to happen, and but I mean, it's taken away from an absolute perfect second half of football that Kansas City played to win the Super Bowl. I mean, the whole at the end sucks because that's part of this narrative, but they scored on every push that they had the football in the second half and won.
Agreed. No, I don't think you can't take away from Yeah, go ahead.
I'm like Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own with where I have to get out. Okay.
I can handle the truth.
It was you can't handle the truth.
That's a different one. Few good. Damn, I'm so.
That's a Few Good Men. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm back.
How many are we up to? We're up to like a Tony Orlando song and a couple movies. So anyway,
there's no in baseball. Now I'm back. I'm on your reference. Go.
The thing is, it's like, well, you do look like a penis with that hat, but that, that's the other thing.
That's when he got thrown out. I remember that part.
The issue is, and there was somebody that used to be a professional referee in the NFL gave me a text, said that was it you, Richie, that had Cheffers in red and white stripes?
Yeah,
that was a lot of people.
Yeah, that was him.
That was beautiful. Even with the logo where the NFL would be, that was beautiful. The issue is when and where you call the penalties you call. Because I would say either the first or second play from scrimmage, and I've been waiting a couple of days, which is why I'm here. I've been waiting to say the first or second play from scrimmage where Reed drills the mofo out of bounds right at the yard marker head to head, no flag. No flag. It was a blatant, should have been a personal foul hit. No flag. That the Kansas City Chiefs on one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. How many holding penalties did they have? I can't recall. Oh yeah, I can. 0 on the best defensive line in football. Now I'm sorry, not even one. It's where the penalties are called or not called, and in the area of the game, in the time of the game. I will give you that. I would think that if you don't call the penalty, and Carr comes out and he kicks the field goal, it's now a 3-point game. But there's 1 minute and 8 seconds left on the clock, with a couple timeouts that the Eagles have. I'm not sure exactly how many. I think at least 2. The Eagles have 2 timeouts, 1:08, and they're down 3. Okay? That's the difference, and that's why everybody is I'm jumping out of my friggin' chair here. Literally this chair, because I was watching the end of the game from this chair. We had the whole man came out. We were watching, and it was. And I will say, the Kansas City Chiefs and Reed made the best second half changes of any game that I've seen recently. The best. He was the best in making the changes in the second half. And Spagnuolo, even better than that. Because really it was Spagnuolo that won the game for the Chiefs. But what I'm saying is it's where and when and to what extent are the penalties called and not called. And
did you call them the Chiefs or the Chiefs?
In the span of you, there's been three other comments about calls that the Eagles should have had that didn't happen. I mean that's just the nature of officiating. There's going to be
no, but Alex, that's exactly what I was saying. I know Captain was patiently waiting, so I just kind of said, "Okay, go." But that's exactly what I was saying, though, and what I said earlier is the refs set the tone for the style of the game. So if the Chiefs got away with a bunch of penalties and the Eagles got away with a bunch of penalties, then that's cool. Then generally speaking, the message that you're sending as a reffing crew at that point is we're going to basically we're going to let you play as long as you basically don't grab a dude by the face mask and throw him to the turf or something to that effect, right? And that's cool. And Alex, that's one of the reasons why that was one of the best Super Bowls that we've seen in perhaps even a decade, if it wasn't for that last idiotic call. Because
it ruined one of the better games.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Because you're deprived of an Eagles. Let's see what happens with 108 to play. When you call that penalty at that time, and then it's just milk the clock, get the field goal, and there's 8 seconds on the clock instead of 108, it's fait accompli. There's my Latin for the day, okay? Fait accompli. You're not going to come back from that. That's the point. You're deprived of what could have been. Let's see what happens with they're up 3 with 108 and some timeouts instead of they're up 3 with 8 seconds and you got one play left and the guy can't even throw it 30 yards.
And Captain, I do think that as the folks that have been somewhat critical of this, of the kind of the four of us, that us two have kind of come out publicly and said some stuff. I'm not even saying that I think the Eagles would have won.
No.
I do want that. I do want that, Brock. I'm not even saying the Eagles would have won. I'm just simply saying that a certain tone was set to the game, and in my opinion, from what I saw, calling that call when and where they did, based on what they hadn't called for the entirety of the game up to that point, they deprived the fans of what was otherwise a spectacular Super Bowl, and also deprived us of seeing the teams just simply battle it out.
That's what really pissed me off. And Coach, I want to give Coach props for immediately texting me on or during the. It was either on my broadcast. Oh no, it was on my broadcast.
It was on your show.
Yeah, on my show. He said, "How you doing?" And I was so livid. I was so livid, and I will tell everybody this, and I will admit it. I was really, really thinking not being here, but because I liked the guys that much, I liked the show that much, that I wanted to be a professional that much. But it was hard. It was hard for me to even be here. That's why I joked I'm just here so I won't get fined. It really bothers the hell out of me that you have a game that was that good and that was a thrilling and literally and see, I do have my pants on for a reason, on the edge of your seat, because I had to go to the edge. I pushed my chair back to go on the edge of the seat, and then it's washed. It's like, oh, okay, well, we know who won.
I mean, it's not a wash though. You're only saying that because it's the Chiefs. You guys all said Chiefs win playoffs. You all said once they made the playoffs. Hey, I'm talking right now. Hey, you've had your moment. Tell me how they got cheated. The refs won it for the Chiefs. But the next door remains, they did a perfect second half of football and won that game by themselves. Okay, well, it wasn't the rest. It wasn't some gift. And the Eagles had every opportunity to win it 10-2. They're a good football team. Mahomes is a quarterback. I mean, you guys are obviously salty about that, but I'm not going to let you just sit here and tell me they didn't win the Super Bowl because of the talent on their team or the adjustment they made. You're here constantly telling me that the refs won. You did an AFC Championship game, and then they're going to get exposed. And you wanted to say, they gave up 0 sacks to the best defense in the league, and you wanted to discredit that because they got holding calls. I don't even think that the Eagles' offensive line had any holding calls. I mean, overall, good game. Like I said, it sucks.
Did I not a couple minutes ago give props to Spagnuolo and Reed for the best second half adjustments? I seem to recall that a couple minutes ago. I said,
but when you give me that with the backhanded jab, it's not really props or
Alex,
compliments.
I can't stand your friggin' team. That's obvious. But I will say, had it been any other team, I would have said the same thing. I wouldn't be as vociferous about it. That is true. But I would say that this team, let's say AFC versus NFC, the play is the same. I would have said that was a ganked game because the officials dictated who won. Now, obviously, I am a little bit more pissy about it because, again, the whole public was deprived of what could have happened with 108 to play. That, I swear to God, unbiased, we were deprived of that because, again, the Chiefs did everything right in the second half. The Eagles couldn't do anything right, really, in the second half. And we were deprived of that. And I go to not to my grave, because I don't want to do that until I really need to. I go to my grave saying that I firmly believe, if it was for any team, I would say that was effed up because I've said that for the last couple of games that were Super Bowl, Bengals, Rams, or Chiefs, Bucks, right? There were games, there were plays, and it's like, oh man, they won because it was messed up. I say to you, and I say to all, my hat's off to the Smugs. But the fans were proud of the ending, and I mean that. I really do mean that.
Well, let me interject my question I have for the panel. So let's say hypothetically that the refs do not call that play, and then they replay it on live TV and say that the refs missed the call on the hold on Juju and Bradbury's interaction, and they get 3 right there. Give the Eagles the ball back. The Eagles go down and get 7 and win the game. Wouldn't the game be admired in controversy as well in favor of the Eagles?
Yes.
So what do you,
but not as bad.
So what do you do in that situation?
I don't think that's as bad. It's not against the Chiefs. No,
it's not.
No, no. Here, let me tell you why. If I can just quickly jump in and make like a super quick comment on that as to why. The entire game was basically played through without calling those types of calls, start to finish, and as a result of that, we ended up with ease. Like we have all collectively agreed, I think that was maybe one of the best Super Bowls that we've seen in a freaking. Just like as far back as I can remember, almost ever. And the only one I obviously enjoyed more was Super Bowl 50, which is obviously because the Broncos won. But if you're going to be truly honest in terms of how riveting the game was, and like, as a non-Broncos fan, this was just right the heck up there because it was so good. The refs set the tone for the game. The tone that was set for the game was that they were not calling those types of ticky-tack type penalties. So if that had happened, that would have been certainly something that would have been discussed. And I wouldn't have necessarily fully disagreed with that as a comment, but it would have been consistent with the way the entire game was called to that point. And at least they held the consistency there. And on top of that, the penalty was not so egregious that you're looking at that and saying, the guy was dragging his jersey or he was holding him from catching the ball or something like that. And that's where I would have then been right on the same side with the KC fans and said, look, the dude held him from catching the ball. That was absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I think the refs wanted to be on the right side of history in a sense, because I don't think they wanted to decide the game negatively because it was a hold. It was by the letter of the law, it was a hold, and I think they felt like they had to call it in that moment, especially when they missed the one in Bradbury earlier in the game. So this is how you work the refs. Bradbury held him legitimately and caused the incompletion earlier in the game. So you, as a wide receiver, you go to the ref like, ref, he's holding me.
I'll drive it. He didn't score for him.
Ref, he's holding me. Ref, he's holding me. So at that particular moment, in that crucial time frame, when it's in the back of the mind that he keeps telling me he's holding me, the ref is going to be watching for it. And if he does it in a crucial moment like that, he's going to have to call it. Consciously, he's going to have to call it. So he did. He threw the flag, and that's what ended up being the ultimate outcome of the game. So you have to look at it from almost a makeup call standpoint. But yet again, it's a method of working the refs too. I've seen it done. It's happened many times while I played, when I've coached. I've seen it, and when I watched the game, you work the refs to the point where you can get a call at a crucial moment, and that's what happened. Now, it just so happens to be the most grandiose and most epic of circumstances, but that's the way it went down. So honestly, truly, I don't have a problem with it, because I understand what position the ref was in that moment. Because if I'm a referee in that situation, I don't want to be the one that didn't call it and cause the Chiefs the title. Now, if the Eagles do get the ball back and have an opportunity to win the game at the end, all is well in love and war. But it just so happens that they ran the clock down and only gave 8 seconds.
May I interject? Didn't the same thing happen a year ago? At the very end of the game.
In the AFC title game?
Which caused the Rams to get the win. It was because the refs had not done anything. That they basically played the same game. They played it an even game for the most part last year. No call. They're going to play. And I think within about the last 2 minutes or so, and I might be mistaken about the timing, but then they had a call which gave the Rams either the first down or the opportunity to score. It's the same script. And that's why I said,
I'm pretty sure.
Well, from that perspective, at least you said they're consistent. You at least got to say they're consistent, if nothing else. If it's consistently bad or good, you can call it what you want to call it. But at least they're consistent in regard. And they call it to the letter of the law at the end of the game, because they don't want anything to come out. Because there's so many cameras on everything now that you honestly, truly will get caught if you don't do things at the right moment at the right time. And that was a crucial moment in the game, and they didn't want to be on the wrong side of saying that, because the officials been getting browbeat all year. We got people harassing them on Twitter, showing up to the games early, harassing them and stuff like that, telling them how bad they are and how egregiously they are blowing calls, and things, and the roughing the passer calls has been an issue all year. So at the right moments and the right times, the most crucial times of the game, they blow the whistle. And I think that's the way they've been officiating.
Right. So my other point here is the timing of the particular call as well. So as an example, so it's 2 things. One, if that was such an egregious holding call, the line ref that was right at the side that was closest to the play would have been the likely one to throw the flag if it was such an egregious holding call that it then would have been an issue. And I agree that if that had happened, and here's the other kicker, if it was that ref that threw the flag right at the time as soon as the hold took place, I actually don't think that I'd be making the comments that I am right now. Because it wasn't that ref. It was the ref that was at the back of the end zone who was looking at Mahomes pointing, losing his mind because he wanted a call to obviously to the benefit of his team, and I can't blame him for that. Like that's part of his job as a quarterback, is to leverage his cachet within the league to try to have his team win. Good for him. But at the end of the day, the ref that threw the flag was right near the back end of the end zone.
It was the back judge. Who was instead of the line judge?
Who would have not had a visual look at the back right of the jersey, which is where the actual holding took place. A flat palm in the back of the back is an accepted hand placement in the NFL. The part where the actual hold took place, because of the wheel route, which is what it was, a crossing wheel route, the natural position that a cornerback ends up in that particular style of play is that the right hand ends up kind of brushing up against the jersey, and cornerbacks do it every game, every time, and most of the time they get away with it, where they give a little squeeze on the jersey as the wide receiver goes by to then resituate themselves to then pivot to get the back on the hand and follow him down the field. Coach, I'd imagine that's probably something that's taught actually at the defensive level when that kind of crossing pattern occurs for defensive backs in order to appropriately position themselves to chase down the receiver.
Actually, no, you're taught to go hip to hip.
Right, but that's
taught to
what he
get
was
square
doing.
to go hip to hip, but you're not told to grab them. It's a tactic. It's a tactic, but you don't tell them flat out to grab him. No,
Yeah.
No, that's not a teaching
As a
point.
coach, you're going to say grab the jersey, but my point is that.
Or you could be like Bill Belichick. If they're wearing white, we wear white gloves, and you can't see me grabbing. You do something like that. That's a tactic. But I would say that from a technique perspective, no, you're taught to get even with him, go hip to hip, and turn to find the ball. That's what you're taught to do, especially on a one-on-one route of a fade variety, a streak variety, or a wheel variety. You're taught to get hip to hip and locate the ball, get square with them, and what they call plaster. They call plaster to the receiver, and gets and you basically are literally on it in his body, but you're not making illegal contact to him.
Right. And I'm refrained now. I've gotten rid of my bile from the last 3 days. I got a chance to express it. Okay, seriously. And the only other thing that I had an issue with was the Devontae, the skinny kid from Alabama.
Devontae Smith.
Thank you. I didn't want to. I know it was Devontae. With the catch he had, and they went 10 minutes to figure out that it was back to the back. That was telling you that this was not the best officiated game going. That was a clue as well. And I think it was a catch on that one. I think the only one that they got right, and I know this is I know you're gonna get on me that I really thought that the guy was an incomplete fumble for I think they got that one right. I think they got the Smith catch wrong.
I don't know.
The Scoopin score that wasn't the one that got hit in the flats, and they got that one right. I agree. By the letter of the law, they got that one right. I agree with that. They got that one right.
Again, I think, but you give Devontae Smith that should have been a catch, and I don't know what the what do you call it? I don't know what the outcome of that series was. I think that was where they only got 3 at the end of the game, correct? For the end of the first half.
Yeah, and in fairness, there was my point ultimately here is that there was other calls that were not called that should have been. And so, for example, there's been a previous comment in the show here of the fact that the Eagles on special teams actually brushed up against the Chiefs kicker or punter rather. Punter, sorry. And that should have been called. I am not sitting here saying that.
Didn't say that was that game.
No, but Alex, my point is, I'm not sitting here saying that the refs called a perfect game. What I am saying is that the refs intentionally, clearly were not calling every penalty. And that's cool, but that sets the tone for the game. And as a fan, rightly or wrongly, that's how I expect the game to then be played, unless you have some kind of just ridiculously egregious penalty where you're basically holding back trying to hold back a horse on the dude's jersey or a face mask or something along those lines. The refs already set the tone for the game, and in my opinion, yes, that was a penalty by the letter of the law, but there were so many other penalties by the letter of the law that were not called up until that point that it cheapened that call, and it certainly impacted the remainder of that game, and certainly put a negative spin on what was otherwise one of the best Super Bowls we've seen in a decade.
Hey, Ray Haas, I definitely agree with that. The catch rule definitely needs to be changed again, but that's a whole nother conversation. But what I will say about the game as well that we haven't even addressed for real is the fact that what the Eagles defense didn't do in the second half. The amount of points that they gave up in the second half was egregious. So regardless of the last drive,
a third of all
led the league in sacks, didn't get not one in the whole entire game, and on fact that how many points they gave up in the second half was egregious.
It's the quarterback if you're being held and it's not being called either, Coach.
Well, listen, we can argue semantics all day, but coaches say, offensive line coaches say, there's holding on every play. To choose one,
there is holding on every play. I mean, and you in the NFL, you can actually hold by what would be considered holding in college is not holding in the NFL. As long as your hips are parallel
within the framework, you got to be within the framework.
Parallel, and you have to be within the pads, and that is illegal.
As long as you're within the framework of his body, it's a legal. It's a legal play.
And honestly, I as good as the offensive line, I think I'd give it 65% of it probably was due to the crappy ass field that they had. You saw players slip everywhere.
That was a problem. Yeah, that was a problem.
Mahomes had that fingertip catch to Kelsey. Even Mahomes, like you saw all the offensive line, the whole defensive line, Eminem slip. I mean, I think that was part of it, but I think, like I said last week, Reed knows how to scheme against good rushing, pass rush teams. Like you saw, they constantly were doing jet sweeps, ordering guys around to like make them kind of get discombobulated on where it's going, and they didn't block Reddick all the times and made him decide, is this a screen or what's going, and that actually played to their advantage. I do think that the field played a bigger role than it would have. But at the end of the day, for all the talk of it being such a great pass rush and there being such a team sack, I thought that Chiefs offensive was the biggest reason that they were in a position to win and won the like you say with any game, the trenches is how you control the trenches is probably the deciding factor of your success once the clock hits zero. And giving up 0 sacks to it had like 78, 79, like third all time, and pretty good effort, pretty good feat, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the field player factored into it because have the Eagles change their cleats throughout the game. Have the team change their cleats. That's telling as well.
Jalen Hurts changed it within like the first 5 plays.
There you go.
What if you listen to the new podcast? Jason and Travis talked about it for a while. Just had how bad the field was, and that they were all changing and change cleats or add like 3 pairs of cleats to think about. I definitely that was a component that I think helped with the lack pass rush. Because even for the Chiefs, the second highest team in terms of defensive pressure and sacks. I had 2, but I not really because we're Jalen Hurts running out like behind the line of scrimmage. So it was a clean game on both sides. Both offensive lines played exceptionally well, and it came down to whoever had last. I thought the Eagles had a great game plan. It just got to a
Mama
point.
The answer to that question is no.
Clearly not. They might have just painted the whole field.
Yeah, right.
The entire field. Make it all Super Bowl colors, no green.
No, they opted to use the oil-based paint, which is why it was so bloody slippery.
And this is my thing. Yeah, 2 years to prepare for this. How did you be so that egregiously bad? Like that's a travesty. $800,000.
Travis
and you got that.
He thinks it's because they can roll it out that they don't. They're like, it'll grow. If you get it out in the sun, it feels like there's always issues talking about those feet are set up like that where they hold the grass out. I think there's only like 2 or 3 of them, but I feel like every time a game they're complaining of the turf. But you could see everywhere. Even the Elliott, the kicker. Like I'm kind of shocked he didn't break his ankle on that kickoff. I
know. Yeah, they thought he was hurt too.
You see the field goal where the Eagles kicker was kicking the field goal, and his ankle was horizontal, like. His body was this way, his ankle was this way, and they zoomed in, and you kind of looked at it and said, how is he still walking?
Exactly. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't have how you take 2 years and $800,000 and get that. I don't understand. I really don't understand. Hey, Cap, is that ref on the NFL Nation Live account?
That is ref. That is
Yes,
ref
it
guru.
is. And that's why I said I don't have to say anything because I got somebody who's actually been a zebra in the NFL with the comments that he has. I'll just let him go.
Hey, okay, there he is. Well, appreciate you coming through,
So
ref.
we again, one of the benefits of the Wild Wild West and the networks that are joining us here today and our affiliations and whatnot, we have different fans that come in from all walks of life, including actual former NFL referees that are joining Captain Jack directly after the show at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Unfortunately, not tonight, so I don't have to give a plug for a show that's not going to take place.
Oh,
Well, I just gave a shameless plug.
We did it for you.
You're right. You definitely did it for
I thought
you.
that was a great segue.
So,
Yeah,
no, I don't mean drunk and all that.
ask this.
Hey,
Hold
Jeff,
on,
we
hold
gotta have
on.
a show now. We got a show now because he
No,
gave us some
but let's do this. I want to ask Ref why he's here. Ref, if you're officiating that game at that moment, would you have made that call?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And by the way, the guy who threw the flag was, I think it was rest position. He was a back judge.
Okay. I want to. Ref said he would. Boom.
He
Game
just
over.
said you
He
yeah.
said you called it. Boom. Game
We don't
over.
have to say
You called it.
anymore.
Game
We don't
over.
need to
It's
say
done.
anything else.
You don't got to say anything else. There it is. Drop
And,
the
but
mic.
But it was
Sorry.
also,
Drop the
if you look at,
I mean,
I also
45 minutes
bring
talk
up
about
this as
winning the
well.
whole ball, rather than what the Chiefs did to win the game. Okay, but it was
That was
still
earlier.
also
No, that was
said that.
earlier. He did,
You
but
know,
that
if
was
I
early.
commit
The
murder and I
direct
say,
answer to my
"Oh,
question, he
this
said
guy
yes.
was murder. Should I get
No,
off?
I
No.
got it. Optics were bad.
And
Thank you,
so,
Raf.
guys-
Appreciate you.
And I'm not
Guys,
denying that. I said it sucks that it happened at the game, but at the
Agreed,
end of the day,
agreed,
it is a
agreed.
penalty. Like
Agreed.
I don't understand what we're like complaining about when they actually made a real call that was controversial. The only thing that was controversial about it was it happened with a minute left game. But he was holding. Bradbury himself took it on himself in his post game conference. Say I was holding. You know, he could have said no. He could have added fuel to it. But I think we didn't want to take away from the fact that it was a great game and both teams played great, and it sucked how it ended, but it was a penalty.
Right. And shout out to the Eagles, man, for taking accountability for everything. They didn't hide from anything. They didn't make any excuses. They owned everything that happened in the game. Appreciate you, Avatar.
Yeah, I agree. So the other thing that I want to bring up with the panel here and everyone joining this show, again, love the active chat. Keep those questions and comments coming. One thing that we're not talking about here is the fact that the Broncos' former head coach and arguably one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, Vic Fangio, was brought in as a defensive consultant for the Eagles. For 2 weeks as a 2-week contract. Now, for those of you who don't know, the MHRT Network has a new podcast that we brought into the fold, who went live last night, later in the evening. And Caleb and Pinky made up a great comment on that show, and I actually agree. And that is, Vic Fangio is not a good fit for the Eagles. He's just not.
He went to Dolphins, right?
Right. Yeah, it's the Dolphins. DC. He just was consulting on that one particular game.
Yeah, and it really worked too.
No, and no, but here's the thing: Vic Fangio is a spectacular defensive mind, and you either go all in on his style or it will fail. And the reason why that's true is he basically plays the game like a chess master, how he implements his defense. And in order for you to succeed using his defense, you can't only use pieces of it because you will not do well. And so, Alex, you were making an interesting comment earlier in the podcast. Captain, I think you kind of jumped in a little bit as well. Coach, I was actually surprised you didn't make any comments on it because this is like literally your wheelhouse. But Vic Fangio is not a pressure, pass rush, all the time blitzing type guy. That's not his MO, right?
No, you're
That's
right. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm curious as to why they consulted with him. I mean, I guess based upon the fact that he was in the West.
Familiarity of the AFC West.
Yeah, he's in the West.
So I'm going to get.
If I'll be honest with you, if I'm going to pick a person that's had success against the Chiefs, I'd call Brandon Staley. before I call Vic Fangio. Let's be real about it.
I think it was one, the availability and just the coincidence.
Yes, you can't talk to Staley. He's under contract.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Because he wants to go under contract yet. So, okay, I guess.
To answer everyone's question here, the reason why Fangio was brought in is because Fangio, in all of his years with the Denver Broncos, held the Chiefs to the lowest points total they've ever been held to during that stint. However, the reason why I made the comment earlier was you either go all in with the Fangio style of defense or you just don't do it at all.
Yeah, you're not going to change. Yeah, the way Gannon was running this defense, you're not going to change that whole philosophy
and
what Fangio wants to do.
You know, like the two touchdowns scored were identical plays. Just switch. The Tony and Scott Moore were identical plays. The regular jet motion. Yeah. And kudos to Eric Bieniemy for finding that out with Doug Peterson, because he was talking about that all week of like
exactly.
Other teams have some things we run.
And that's why I was giving props to the Chiefs and said not only did they do it well in the second half, they ran the same play to the one side to the opposite side with results.
And they never adjusted.
It's a friggin' touchdown. When the guy runs with you and then they plants goes back, that is game film watching. Not only did they do it once, they did it twice. So
absolutely,
you can see see Trevor Lawrence when they play the Eagles. They had a similar. They scored touchdown
the same exact motion, and they got it.
Just responded the same way because they were just too afraid to get beat on the sweep round.
Right.
So I don't know what exactly they brought Fangio into.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Like I said,
outside of familiarity and tendencies, Reed and the offense would have, because they clearly were a successful pass rush team without him being there, and it was almost like I feel like they did too much, because to me, I wasn't watch every Eagles game, but to me, it seemed like they played different than how I watched them play in the playoffs.
So
they didn't run anywhere near the way that they were running in that game, and I think part of that was obviously at least in the first half and a little bit in the second half, but you could tell that it was just milk the clock, get points out of it, but take at least 6 minutes every time we got the ball. I mean, hell, they haven't played dry. It was like 10 minutes long. To that as well, they were snap ball with 1 second or 0 seconds left.
Every play.
And I think that a lot of changed the way that they played up to this point because of the Chiefs. And trying to scheme with how to play, and I think that kind of impacted at least a little productivity for the Eagles. But yeah, I thought that was when I saw that report of Fangio, I thought that had to be the only reasons. What did he see in playing in the AFC West for 3 years, 4 years, 3?
When I did, I had to do it because it was a super on my channel. And if I didn't put it on, then John Leon had just spent $20 for no reason. I wanted to make sure it got on there. John, thank you for that. And so again, and John, I will say this, and I think I got the quorum here as well. It's hard to say that any game is rigged, because you have to have the entire crew do it. You'd have to have the entire crew do it, and it's really hard.
Only thing it's been rigged, a World Series.
One person, you no longer have a secret, and that's the way it is. It's very hard to do.
Yeah, the only way you can really truly rig a game is to have the head ref kind of start overruling plays. But the thing is that that's such a career killer for a head ref in order to do, that the odds of you being able to accomplish that are very, very slim. I ultimately think that the real issue that we all have with it is that they let every other penalty go at every other moment of the game except for that one. And I think that is really where the biggest kind of issue is, and that's certainly where my issue lies with that. Now, I just want to quickly go back to Fangio and the defensive style we saw. It certainly had Fangio footprints or handprints all over that particular defensive style. But the problem is that that's not what worked for the Eagles, and that's not what the player personnel are on the Eagles. And they relied so heavily on getting pressure into the backfield and stopping Mahomes that they really should have just stuck with what they were doing, and they either win or lose based on the way that they were playing before.
Exactly right. Richard, let me piggyback on that. That boils down to coaching and experience, because when you're grasping at straws because you hadn't been there before, you're trying to get any advantage that you possibly can. You don't know what you don't know, and in that regard, you say that I'm gonna instead of riding with what got me here, I'm gonna try something different, and it didn't work.
Because you're overcomplicating.
Overcompensating is what the problem.
Overcomplicating. They're both valid adjectives in that regard. I think that what they did to themselves were, I mean, you look at the numbers. They gave up 38 points in 24 minutes of football. The Eagles had the ball 38 minutes. The Chiefs had it 24. Mm-hmm. So give or take 36 to 24. I'm sorry, 36 to 24. So you give them
scored on every drive this half too.
Right. It was a 24-11 second half. So
one possession in the second.
Exactly. So you have to look at it from a perspective that you gotta literally ride with what got you here. If that's not good enough to get you over the hump, then so be it. But I'm gonna live and die with what got me through this 18 and 19 week season and got me to the point where I'm playing in the Super Bowl. I'm not gonna go and completely try to reinvent the wheel and do anything differently than what got me there, because ultimately that was a winning formula up to this point.
So here's what I want to say with that game.
And may I say, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, so what my point would have been is they kept KC to a deficit coming into the half. If I'm the Eagles, what I would have done to throw a wrench into the thing, into everything for the Chiefs, and this is I truly believe this is all on the head coach and on the defensive coordinator for being young coaches in the NFL and having such a lack of experience. And that is simple, which is what the Eagles should have done is reverted right back to their original defensive scheme in the second half. So they should have kept with the Fangio scheme, which worked in that first half, but they should have planned on the fact that their Fangio scheme was going to be countered by Andy Reid, who is he is an elite head coach at the NFL level. I truly don't care who you are and what team you cheer for. That guy is like top 3. And the
Dolphins got themselves a steal. I like the idea of McDaniel and Fangio teaming up next year. And the Dolphins, if they get their quarterback situation worked out, they're going to be a handful next year.
Right. And so when I look at what the Eagles did and didn't do, what the Chiefs did do was they said, Fangio's running this show. Well, here's how we counter that. Right?
Well, that might be what the Chiefs really did. They went in the half and say, okay, we'll game plan like we're playing against Fangio, and guess what? 24 points in the second half.
Right. And so then the the counter that from Gannon is to say, all right, time to play Gannon ball. Right? Because if the Chiefs are playing to go against Fangio and they get Gannon instead, well, now all of a sudden that adjustment at halftime isn't going to work because you're trying to go against a different scheme, right? And the issue with an inexperienced head coach and defensive coordinator, and I think, Alex, this is what you were kind of alluding to earlier in the show, which is like we really cannot take away for just how good the Chiefs adjusted at halftime.
And that's down to coaching, straight up coaching.
That is coaching.
Yeah.
That is your head coach just being better.
The difference between a good coach and a great coach is how ability to adjust in game.
Yeah.
The Manning brothers said there's no such thing as halftime adjustments, but but I mean the only stat that I wrote down, and I read in Barnwell, the ESPN main writer. But he said, in terms of the second half, if you let it just put it into perspective how perfect they were. If you look at their conversion rate, with every time looks at, do they get a second first down and a touchdown when they start their drive? Chiefs' conversion rate was 3.8%. for the second half. And the only reason it wasn't 100 is because McKinnon took a knee on the one to run the clock down.
There you go.
I mean, even if you didn't that, they scored. They converted every time ball in the second half to 2 points.
Yeah.
And that just at
some
wild.
point, even the offensive leaning league, you got to get a stop. You got to get a stop.
Because that's what I kept saying watching it. Especially watching how the Eagles played in the first half. The Chiefs can get momentum and keep scoring. The Eagles are going to shoot themselves in the foot because they're going to have to get out of their game plan of milk block, and they're going to have to score quick to respond. And I don't think that they can do it with Hurts' injury. I mean, you saw his last play. It's unfortunate, but that was kind of an unspoken about topic heading into the game. But I don't think Jalen Hurts is exactly 100% in terms of the deep ball accuracy and deep downfield attack that they did through the scene attack going into before his injury when it was the Hurts and Mahomes neck for MVP. So I think that that's what it came down to, was just the fact that the Chiefs were able to putting points on the board and forcing the Eagles to have to score quicker. And then you saw them. Goddard had like that unreal catch on 3rd and 14. Converted it, but they were in those types of positions in the first half because they were able to keep RPOs, keep outside zones, and doing their rug style sneak when it got to 3rd and 1. So I think that the adjustments that they made on top of the offensive line, just being able to contain their pass rush. Those were the thing, and the Kadarius Toney punt return, which was pretty sweet. But
that was a turning point in the game. But I think that we aren't underscoring one thing that people that really aren't harping on: the fact that the Chiefs did really good against the Eagles' run offense. They stymied their run on normal run plays. They stymied their run way better than I thought they ever would in this game. They had a top tier rushing attack, and they pretty much limited it. They actually outrushed them in the game. The Chiefs outrushed the Eagles, which is unheard of. We don't hear that often that the Chiefs outrushed anybody. So that them running the ball at a high clip. I think they almost had close to 200 yards rushing in the game as a team, and that's a rarity for the Chiefs as a whole.
Chiefs ran. They averaged 6.1 per carry for themselves. Eagles had 3.6.
If you are a bet man, you would not bet on the Chiefs averaging a 6.1 a clip carry on anybody, especially in the Super Bowl against the Eagles defense. So yeah, I definitely kudos to the fact that they were able to stymie their run and make them quote unquote one-dimensional. Now, granted, they did much better than I thought they would if you took away their run from them in traditional fashion. They did pass the ball, relatively well, and still move the ball throughout the game. But I think that if they were able to run wild from a running perspective, Miles Sanders and Gainwell and those guys were able to get off, I think it's a different game. So I give the Chiefs a lot of credit for I think I give the Chiefs a lot of credit for being really stout against the run. For sure.
Well, I actually think where the real credit has to go in the second half is Andy Reid truly pivoted, and what you saw was a healthier dose of Pacheco.
That you did.
Okay, and that is no, seriously, like it was really, really good. And Pacheco, as much as it pains me to say it, you guys knocked it out the park with that as a draft pick.
They got a lot. I think I showed Alex a stat. I think they got a lot of contributions from a lot of their rookies in the past two drafts.
If you look at their entire secondary almost outside of Reed and Jarius
Sneed,
Thornhill. So they're McDuff, but they're other. I mean, they had two major contributing corners out that were taken 5th and 6th round, which is just unreal. To get that type of done out of a 5th and 6th round pick, and I mean both of them have had in the grand scheme of the year, have had pretty big plays. I mean they had a lot of rookies that were big contributors in making up for the loss of Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, and it all came to fruition in this game. Yeah,
that comes down to coaching, right? You have a guy like Andy Reid, who has been around the league for longer than many have been alive. And
yeah, I mean, the Eagles to the Super Bowl 2006.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the point is, he's been in the league longer than many have actually been alive, and that is awesome. And as a result of that, he has deep-rooted ties and knows just about everybody. And people know that he's not a good coach, but a fantastic coach, an elite coach. And so if you are an aspiring coach at the NFL level and you want to try to tack onto your resume, he is not a bad coach to hitch your wagon to then try to elevate yourself to maybe be seen as a defensive coordinator one day somewhere if you can kind of show us a certain position group.
Yeah, here's a stat for you. 13 draft picks in the last 2 years got meaningful minutes in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. 13 draft picks.
Yeah.
Got meaningful minutes in the last 2 years. Last 2 drafts for the Chiefs, 13 players have got meaningful minutes in the Super Bowl.
And their first round pick from 2 years ago was a healthy scratch.
Right. It was hilarious. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah. But it's just unreal the amount of production and able to get it from guys later in the draft are Carlos Dunlaps, like your 12 plus guys that are just let's look for a little ring chasing or going somewhere to in the playoffs. You got to give credit to Brett V well for what he's been able to do while working around. He's a pretty hefty contract, although you see the extensions that will have gotten, it's not as terrible. But I think a lot of it goes to Brett V, what he's been able to do since kind of taking over the reins.
So Jack's been a longtime fan of the show. Love the question here, guys. I really do want us to kind of go around all four and give our takes. Coach, I'm going to throw to you and I'll go last. What are your thoughts on this? Because I think this is a great question.
Right, and I'm glad Ref is in the chat as well, because it was something I want to point out to him as well in regards to this.
Right.
Is that I feel like I've been saying for a little while, why don't all the money the NFL makes, why don't they have dedicated refs, dedicated full-time refs? Why not? So I really want to give refs perspective on that, but I believe that, to Jack's point, I think they should either A, have their own dedicated refs that they can rely on consistently and not have to pick from a pool each time, and add as many as you need to in order to get the calls right. You can have 20 refs, I don't give a damn, or 20 refs and 20 cameras, but get the calls right. That's all I ask.
Have a ref for every player.
11 at a time.
Yeah.
11 at a time. That's right. So yeah, I
heard
think
of zebras.
whatever works is my opinion. Whatever works.
44 dudes on the field at the same time, man. That would really cut down the passing lanes. That's for sure.
At least 22. 22 is 11 on 11, so 22.
So, Captain, curious as to your take on that question as well. Obviously, Jack coming from Raider Nation there. Let's see what you have to say about this, and then Alex, you'll go next, and I'll go after.
I would say that, well, first off, they should be full-time. And what Ref said is a lot of the issues are it's mixed crews. And Ref is on board saying that you should keep your crew through the playoffs. It's like when they score the grades, it should be a composite, not just of each referee, but of the crews, so that the crews stay consistent, and the best crews with the best refs, right, they get the game, so that there's not any of that, well, I don't really know this guy. Well, I know him because he's part of the brotherhood, but I haven't worked with him a lot, because they have to do things on the fly. If you are a crew and you've been with the same crew the entire season, you're either going to be consistently good or consistently bad. But if you're consistently good, you get the games. So that's why they shouldn't mix the crews. But it's one of those things that I'm pretty sure, and Rep could probably say yay or nay on this, it probably incentives and bonuses in their contracts too, because they get incentives and bonuses, I'm sure. They need to be full-time, but they need to have a full-time crew. Now, as far as bringing in extra refs, I think that would probably because, again, if you bring an extra ref, then you take apart that whole, you got game's crew +3. And where are you going to put those +3 as well so that it won't affect the field of play? Because, again, you're bringing in
a lot of moving parts.
With the crews.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Get the friggin' calls right, and we won't bitch.
that's a fact.
Well,
I would say that I would say have extra refs, but have them as a camera crew, like have them on the sidelines, and they're actually watching the replays as they happen, so they can do expedited reviews and things of that nature, or change a call if they see something different than what was called in the field.
They do have extra guys on the sidelines. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but there were referees on the sidelines for each game. Those are like the alternate alternates. They're there.
But are they engaged in the game, though? I want them to be looking at a monitor or a screen and tell me what they see. That kind of thing.
Refs said they need better use of tech and sidelines.
There you go. Boom.
And then you're slowing down the game.
So, Alex, what are your thoughts?
I just don't know if there's just a way that you can add more officiating that wouldn't impact the overall flow of the game or the pace of play, if you will, for how a game is now. I do think that there should be like a all-time kind of sky judge that, and if there was something more uniform, I think that would be the quick process where you have someone who's reviewing every play. And if something that is 50-50 or whatever, they have some threshold way to analyze it, but you look at that and tell them, hey, we're looking to take minute and a half and overturn it right there. You don't the headed ref have you have someone tell them like, hey, that wasn't a kick, call it back. And I think they've to do that or kind of tried to get to that point. But I think if you had something like that, that's kind of all eyes in the sky in terms of plays that are doable, things like not looking to see if there's holding on a play or not, but that would be the quick way to, I guess, get more consistent in officiate, or ensuring that some of the missed call things like that are reviewed and overturned or corrected in an efficient manner. That would be me.
I put that up there.
Yeah.
So, Alex, I'm going to take what you just said there, and you almost led right into exactly what I was going to say. My big, like literally, it's like a perfect segue that we never planned, right? But my comment is this, and Ref Guru, want your comments on this comment that I'm about to make, because I'm very curious as to what the perspective of an NFL ref is on this. And what my comment is ultimately is we have New York, who has full kind of authority within a game to review plays and whatnot, like for booth reviews and that sort of thing. I would wonder if we were to basically say New York can veto the head ref because they're able to analyze the film. And if we go that route as an example and stop tiptoeing around the refs' egos that are on the field and simply go off the, hey, look, humans are imperfect. We agree and admit that right off the top. Certain calls need to be corrected by New York. For example, there may have been like Alex, I'll choose from the Chiefs game here, where the roughing the punter call wasn't called. If New York had called that in and said, dude, you're calling this, and then it was a forced flag, why not go that route and kind of start going and calling the right calls at the right time, as opposed to letting this all be subjective from the ref, from the crew that's on the field, and just ensuring that you call a proper, clean, balanced game so that both teams have an even opportunity to win based on the calls that are called or not called. That's kind of my general take on it, is we need to stop this. Again, I'm going to use this game as an example, the Super Bowl. The Chiefs themselves got the call. No other major calls were actually made in the game that were actually game impacting. Jeff A., it's not me, my man. The issue has now been corrected, and I will not name who that is. When you look at the Super Bowl, I know that's why it's fixed. So
I was muted before, though. Just so you know.
I think something's picking up on your end that's kind of causing an echo. But what I was trying to leave you out, my man. You outed yourself.
He did.
I'm a man of honesty and integrity, so
So
I don't need to hide anything.
Yeah. So my point ultimately here is when you look at what happened in the Super Bowl, there were multiple other calls that were not made that could have been called for both the Eagles and the Chiefs that were not. At the end of the day, they made one call at the end of the game, which was pretty blatant. I'm not saying it wasn't a penalty, but I'm saying it was the only major penalty that was called, and it was at a really crappy time. If New York was overarching and wanting to call a balanced game, they would have called the appropriate penalties throughout and overridden the reffing crew so that we would have had a balanced game. Was the outcome be different than what we saw? Yes. But I do not think at that point that you'd then be calling and making the same comments that we're making now and saying there was that last call at the end of the game that was game changing, because there would have been penalties that were called throughout the game and made it a much more balanced and evenly called game overall. That's what I think they should do. And I think they need to basically take the NFL refs, make them full time, and then say your ego's checked at the door. I don't care. That's my kind of yin and yang to fix the situation. And frankly, I don't really give a crap about your feelings.
Well, he said good points to you, Rich. So actually, he's paying attention.
There you go.
Fantastic.
There you go.
I was genuine. I know that some of my comments like that are perhaps more aggressive, but I don't care. And B, I never want to offend anyone that I actually like. And Ref Guru and I actually really like Ref Guru, so I obviously didn't want to offend him. So I did try to add a caveat to that. But I think that's really important that we actually look at things objectively and say that people make mistakes, but by having a larger crew that's outside, that's objective, not in the game, not running around, not missing things, I think that really might add a different dimension to the NFL game and kind of eliminate the types of issues we've seen overall. And by the way, I mean, another great example is the missed call against the Rams, right? Where that was clearly a personal foul where the guy tackled the guy out of bounds, but it wasn't called. Remember, was it 3-4 years ago or something like that? And it was that big talking point at the end of that Super Bowl that call wasn't made.
Well,
so the Saints hit
last year because the Rams haven't been in any Super Bowl
for the Saints.
Yes, yeah.
The Saints Rams were that defensive PI or whatever that wasn't called.
Right, the guy was tackled out of bounds, and it wasn't called. It was an obvious and it was an egregious non-call, right? Like you just
didn't the next year didn't they at least start the season making those calls reviewable?
Yes,
or something. It's just gotten rid of that, I believe.
Yeah,
that was they had it for 1 year to look at it. And they said, "No, this is a can of worms." So, and that's not me.
No, I'm laughing at the Mad Dog's comment, but I want to say something to Ref before I get to that one. Now, Ref, I'm not great at reading lips, but I'm great at reading 4-letter words. So I see what the coaches say to you guys verbatim on the sideline. So I know that it's a lot of browbeating and disrespect that the coaches give y'all throughout the game. So I understand completely how bad it is. So, because that's
just the nature of sports, though. I mean, literally at any setting, if the ref is just a punch bag.
I might not read lips well, but I read 4-letter words well, and I see a lot of 4-letter words flying towards refs throughout the game. So I definitely agree with that. But Douglas's comment. He said McDaniels is a person and a coach. That's hilarious. I just want to point that out.
He's just a vapor, man. He's just vapor.
You think you're so good at reading lips. I don't think you know what you're talking about.
I caught those 2 4-letter words. I caught those. I'm not good at all words, but I'm good at 4-letter ones.
Well, you know what? You, okay?
Oh, thank you. See? I do that one. That's 3. That's 3.
Oh,
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So yeah, man, I honestly truly think that there's definitely some room for improvement. We definitely have to say for sure that it's one of those things where you don't want to over officiate, but you don't want to under officiate, and kind of thing. So you want to be able to call a even kill game where everybody goes away from it saying everything was copacetic and it was one on the field. I think that's the end game we want to get to. We don't want to ever keep arguing and fussing and fighting the fact that the refs cost our teams games. I think that's the ultimate goal here.
Coach, I actually think what the real thing is, officiating should not determine the outcome of a game. Right? If you're going to use a blanket statement that you want to live by at the NFL level, it should be that. Officiating should not determine the outcome of a game, and what that ultimately means.
It's a lot of nuance there. And
I'll explain. You don't want a bunch of no calls early in the game that could have impacted the game, and then call something at the very end of the game that at least optically appears to impact the outcome of the game. So the whole point is, if you're going to call a no call throughout the game, then you call no call throughout the game unless it's absolutely just so egregious that you have to. And if you call stuff throughout the game, then continue to call stuff throughout the game and let the chips fall where they may. The problem is that you never want officiating to be the determining factor.
Well, yeah, maybe they need to take a page out of the NBA referees book, because I tell you one thing: whenever NFL referees are bad, NBA referees are bad, they're bad all game. Like, if they call ticky-tack fouls all game, that's it for 4 quarters. That's what they do. They don't change up. How they are in the first quarter is how they are in the fourth quarter. If they give you a tech in the first quarter, they're going to give you a tech in the second quarter. NBA refs are really consistent with that. Now, maybe they have the quote unquote follow that model to make fans feel better about it, but I definitely believe that that's the only difference between NBA refs and NFL refs, is that it's like you get you get a different vibe per crew. For NFL, NBA refs, coming in. Like when they walk in, you know who the crew is. You already know how they're going to officiate a game before you even start. You already know that they're either really petty or they're really laid back. It's one or the other. There's no in between. You kind of know if
unless you had Tim Donahue, right?
Yeah, right. Unless you're Tim Donahue. I was just going to say that. Unless you're Tim Donahue, who was shaving points all the time. But outside of that, you typically know that based upon what crew is officiating your game, how it's going to be officiated before you even start.
Right. So, guys, I just, for a quick few minutes here, I just, because it's recent news this week, and I think it's very important, especially for our Raiders fans that are joining us tonight. Again,
Mark Davis there.
Well, and I mean, at some point we have
breaking.
At some point, we do need to find his hairdresser and have them on.
Well, wait a second. Instead of looking like Mo, now he looks like Curly.
Oh, so you're saying he has a 1950s hairdresser?
He's bald now. You don't need no hair anymore.
He went from full Mo to full Curly.
Well,
okay? And the point is that Mark has been balding for a while, which is why he has that really effed up hair that he did. And so when I saw the first pictures of him, I'm like, dude, again, I got benefits from Stuart Schweigert said that I ought to show my hair more often because I actually have hair to show. And for as old as I am, I think this is a positive compliment. But when you have effed up hair, get rid of it, dude. Get rid of it. So he finally went, like I said, he went from full Mo to full Curly. So I think it's an upgrade.
Okay.
I mean, good for him. But where I was going with all of that was just a light.
Oh, is there any other Raider news I've been missing? I haven't been keeping it up.
Well, as of right now, your starting quarterback is unknown. No, that's not true. We do have a quarterback on our roster, Chase Garbers. Right now, Chase Garbers is our starting quarterback. Okay, so you have a gentleman who I've never heard of before.
Me neither.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
Best player, think Pirate.
I'm sitting here saying, let me Google that. Hold on.
Right.
But I mean, let's just be honest. That was basically my exact response right there.
Right.
Yeah, and
take it back to
and
Guardians
I
of the
think that there's-
Galaxy. Who?
and I think if we're going to be honest, there's at least a large percentage of Raider Nation who is has the same question. What? Who?
Right.
And I think that's fair. You released Derek Carr this week. I am curious for all in the chat, and Captain, particularly you. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think the implications of that are going to be? And is that going to be something that you believe that your team will regret doing?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking to me.
Well, Coach, the regrets were was paying a guy for 9 years with zero results. That's regrets.
It's nuanced that, but continue.
It got ugly at the end. That's why there was no give and take about Carr giving any extra time, giving the extra month, because all he had to do was give an extra month to March 15th. He said no, and I think that it's gonna be regretful all the way around. The Raiders are gonna have regrets. Carr is gonna have regrets because I'm sorry, even if he's paid median NFL starting quarterback salary, right? Median. He's not making the contract that he had with the Raiders. So the fact that he said, "Okay, I'm go on my own," he's gonna
No
yeah, there you go.
regrets.
No regrets.
My credo.
No regrets. Yeah, but Carr is not going to make the coin that he made. Okay. Hey, Ref, thanks for being here, partner.
Appreciate you, Ref.
Sure. But Carr ain't going to make the 30, the 40, and the 42. He's going to make the next 3 years. Okay, yeah. Will he be able to go where he wants to go? Sure, because he had a no-trade clause anyway. But it was not, and everybody says, well, the Raiders did him wrong. No, Carr got paid for 9 years. 9 years, he got paid. So, and like I said, unfortunately, his year was 2016, when he should have been and could have been the NFL. What was it? The big
MVP.
MVP.
The one that Holmes has won twice.
Yeah, okay. Wait. I don't know what.
I got it.
Okay. I want to make sure you're as good as Coach. Oh, by the way. Anyway, the thing is that was his year, and when he broke that ankle, and then you go from Pat McGroin. That's Matt McGloin. I always say Pat McGroin. Pat McGloin in your final game against the Broncos, who loses, and then you're a Connor Cook, who, by the way, is the answer to the trivia question why Dak Prescott is a Cowboy. It's because the Cowboys wanted to draft Connor Cook, and the Raiders took him like 2 or 3 picks ahead of him. So they ended, we'll go after this Dak Prescott guy. I guess there you go. But Carr screwed up. The Raiders kind of messed up with the way things were handled. It's going to be a mutual of each of us. See, you missed one, Coach. You weren't looking.
Yeah, I was looking at the chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
As far as who will be the quarterback of the Raiders, people are saying that some dude is going to be in a dark place for the next 3 days, sipping on some
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Maybe it's him. I don't think so. They say it's going to be some other guy who was a quarterback in San Francisco and is a free agent. Well, I was just at a shop today. It might be him. It could be the guy. When I was downtown Tampa today, they're saying that guy's going here, and that would be Jimmy Garoppolo. I just really don't want to spend a bunch of money on a retread as a not tweener, as a bridge. I don't want to spend a lot of money on a bridge. Okay, I go after Stidham. He knows the system. Go after Jacoby Brissett. For those that think that Jacoby Brissett sucks, there you go. And Stidham is not going to be as bad of a quarterback as people think. You give him a full time to do it, he'll be fine. Brissett will be fine. And then if they really can't make it, you got 2024, and hopefully I'll still be alive for that to see maybe who they're going to draft as their franchise quarterback. I still really think that they are going to go after the kid from Stanford, and that's going to be their quarterback of the future, and his name is Tanner McKee.
Tank for Caleb Williams, man.
There you go. Thanks for Caleb. Thanks for Caleb.
So, Coach, obviously you slid your input in a little early there, but I don't disagree with your take either. You care to elaborate? Because, I mean, we've seen Carr play against our team twice a year for nine seasons. So, I mean, that's 18 games. That's a substantive amount of totality for us.
Film, yes.
Seeing a quarterback, right? So it puts us in a bit of a unique situation as AFC West, critics, fanalists, if you will,
yes.
where we have to analyze him. What are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely think they made a mistake with this. I think they squandered this particular opportunity with Derek Carr. I think they've done him a disservice in the 9 years. The amount of coordinators and different head coaches he's had over that 10-year, hardly no stability, a lot of turmoil, a lot of scandal, and things of that nature. He wasn't given a whole lot to work with in certain regards. He didn't have a legit number one receiver in the whole entire stint until this year, if you go back and look at it. So I think that that the fact that it was just a bunch of things that didn't bode well for him to be as successful as he could have been. I think he's very capable. I think he has a very lively arm. I think he's more mobile than people give him credit for. I think that where he goes for this forward, if they have a decent system and decent weapons, I think he will be okay. I think he will have a much better season if he has some stability wherever he goes. So I think they kind of mishandled the situation when it comes down to Derek. I think they could have done better by him. He did stick by his team and hold his team down throughout the whole entire issue with what's the guy's name? The last coach, Gruden. So, that whole situation, the rug situation. I mean, it was a lot of things that, he was at the forefront of being I guess you can say the voice of reason for. That he does get credit for. So I really feel like they did him the disservice, and I think they're taking a step back by not investing in him going forward. Now, the amount of money he's going to be getting, would have been getting the last year, is a lot. But I mean, again, your options, kind of what Doug's point was, your options going forward, to me, is a downgrade. You would either start a rookie, or you're going to start a person that's either constantly hurt, or it just isn't as valuable or as talented, in my opinion. So, I think that's one of those things we're going to kind of look back on and say, maybe we should have, gave him some more stability, more support, and we would have been in a better situation.
No, I did see your comment ever, and I didn't know that. The last time that was done was by St. Louis Ram, Kurt Warner.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Alex, curious as to your thoughts on this, because I mean, I really think that the Derek Carr news, in terms of divisional news, is certainly, right up there, because I mean, you can't lose your starting quarterback and not have it, at the very least impact your team. Now, it may be a positive impact if you draft the right guy, for example, like the guy from Stanford, and you get him, and all of a sudden has like a Jalen Hurts impact on your team, right? Like that could be a huge deal where you end up with a net positive. But I mean, at the end of the day, losing a guy who has traditionally been within the top 15 to top 10, depending on the year, there's no way that is not at least a risk and an impact to your team. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and Coach and I have actually talked about this, earlier on this week. To me, I understand why they did it. Obviously, because they were paying him a lot of money when, objectively speaking, the team is that roster's not an elite quarterback away from, from going to a Super Bowl or winning Super Bowl. There's a lot more things that need to be filled. I think that they did it because if they didn't, they had all that guaranteed money that they were on the hook for, which I think of an unspoken thing. You kind of got to give a little credit to. The Raiders GM or for negotiated that contract for at least basically giving them a 1-year prove-it deal and out. They get some draft capital out of it or not. They're not out on the hook for $50+ million. So they've set themselves up at least to fit whatever plan or mold McNeil wants with his system. I just don't. It's going to be interesting to see what that is physically. I mean, I talked to Coach at McNeil. Doesn't strike me as a guy that, there's one specific player that will make his system work. It's his system can work anybody if he had the right guys. And I tend to think that they're going to go to Garoppolo or Brissett, two guys that have from that Patriot way mold. I don't have any inside scoop, but that's just how I view McDaniels. Or really anyone from the village tree. They're trying to make, that style of success, if you will, that was in New England. So I think this is kind of the first no for them to get on that. I mean, I thought pretty apparent just watching, not watching every Raiders game, but checking them, on Red Zone, and it seemed that McNeil's just he didn't want Carr from the beginning, and I kind of sense that he was probably all year saying, I don't want this guy. Like, I need one different who will run this. And I think I brought it up last week that on this show and following you guys, I on Twitter and everything, get more Twitter reaction and everything to other teams' coverage, and there was a lot of showing clips of like McDaniel's pissed because Eric Carr was changing play the line to get touchdowns, and so I like I said, I just think it's a first domino to fall and riding the ship for how the guy they hired wants it to be. Just don't, I think he's going to be gone before they get to that point. That McDaniels, that's I think he's going to be gone in Vegas before they get to the point of his vision coming to light. I've always respected Derek Carr. I think he's not a Herbert or Burrow or Allen, a stage, but he's a serviceable QB and a good game manager. I told Coach I think he should go to it like the Jets that have like an amazing defense and enough financial flexibility and young talent around him that he doesn't have to go shoulder the burden of winning the game. He's essentially manage the game, not turn the ball over, and let their defense win. And that's it. So that's why I'm intrigued to see where they go at QB this year. Because to me, if you get Aaron Rodgers, I think that's only setting them back further. Because you don't have anyone to block for defense to keep you in games. And Rodgers, to me at least had a pretty drastic drop off in his stats. This year compared to how he was last 2 years in his MVP seasons, and I just don't know. So I get why they did it. I am very interested to see who they replace him with. Whether it be a Stidham or someone in the draft. But to me, I think if it's someone in the draft, gotta make some moves to move up a little bit, unless they are just so sold on Levis, or the Stanford guy. But I don't know.
And again, I'm only saying now I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do have somebody who has a source within the building is saying that they are not moving up for a quarterback. They're not going from 7 to 3 or 7 to 4 for any quarterback. 2, that they are eyeing Tanner McKee. And 3, and this is the thing that we all knew about, is that their plan was to have TB12 as their quarterback next year, and he threw him a wrench, which really screwed things up. That is from a source who knows. I'm not saying he's all powerful, but the guy has given good information to the board that I know about in the past. His stuff is reliable. No move up. Brady was going to be their quarterback next year, and that they are eyeing Tanner McKee. Now, could that be where the word is out on Tanner McKee and then somebody else gets him? Sure. But that is what the plan was. They were planning on Brady, which didn't come to fruition. They are not moving up for a quarterback, per the source, and that they are eyeing McKee. Now, if McKee doesn't come to fruition, I still say that Hendon Hooker, because you got to have a hooker in Vegas.
This is true.
This is true. This is true.
And even I will buy a hooker jersey if that comes to fruition.
Listen, it's gonna be collector's item. It's gonna be a collector's item. Yeah, that might be the only Chargers jersey I'm buying. Right? Is a hooker jersey.
Hooker tore his ACL, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
Hooker tore his ACL, which is why you need a bridge quarterback, right? So he can come back in 24. And that's what
I think if they're going for McKee or Hendon Hooker or something like that, I feel like I have to say his name too, so I don't just say Hooker. But then you have to get a Garoppolo or a Brissett or someone like that, so you don't get this guy from Stanford and say go. Because
that's what I'm saying. Even with Garoppolo or Brissett, if it's McKee, you're going to have somebody teach them. So that's why I said if it's Garoppolo or Brissett and Stidham, I think that is going to be the game plan, getting McKee or Hooker or God forbid. Come on, Mundungus. I don't want to copy anything from you, dude, except that your wonderful hospitality in Denver.
So I guess what my take on this is a few things. One, we're seeing McDaniels effectively do the exact same thing he did in Denver, just with a little less controversy in the early stages of his time in Vegas. He did the same thing he did with Carr in Denver, and that is effectively not like him and move on. And Cutler in Denver, Carr in Vegas. I also think that the Raiders fans are severely underestimating just how well Carr has done for you and the things that he's done for you. He is an upper tier quarterback by all measurables when you actually look at numbers and stats. And some of that, I agree, can be some of the offensive weapons that you have around him with, your slot receiver and some other guys on your team. Waller is a great example of another guy that's done well. Josh Jacobs is another guy that's really elevated the offense as well there with the Raiders. But ultimately, Derek Carr is a much better quarterback than what I'm hearing Raiders fans give him credit for. Now, can he get you past the finish line? Maybe not. Right? It's possible, maybe not. But I also don't think, per what Coach said, that you have really done him the service that he needs in order to put a proper team around him. You've either had a really bad offensive line and good skill position, or you've had a really good offensive line and poor skill position, guys. You have not actually put together at least an even blend of both in order to allow Carr to truly succeed. And if you all want to try and push back on me on that one, I ask you to look at what the Kansas City Chiefs did when they then re-signed Mahomes. The very first thing they did was they went and bolstered their offensive line to ensure that Mahomes didn't get himself killed.
Who didn't give up a sack in the Super Bowl.
Right. So, again, the whole point is this.
Zero.
The whole point is this. If you do not have a plan and you do not have – and actually who was it? I think it may have been Coach where you mentioned this. They've had this complete turnstile of offensive coaches and just coaches in general with different.
Between the OCs, the head coaches, it's been a carousel. They've never had any stability in the 9 years he's been there.
Right,
never.
and part of that is not having a game plan put in place when you move forward.
Fact.
So, for example, the best teams in the NFL, the ones that truly do well. Alex, I'm going to use your team as an example for the last 6 years now, right? Look at what the Kansas City Chiefs have with their coach. They have Andy Reid. It's pretty clear what his vision is. So he has implemented it's literally offensive first, defense is kind of there. Baby. And at minimum, there must be a burger joint that's on speed dial. And two backups.
Right? In-N-Out Burger on speed dial. Exactly. In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah, we got Whataburger now in KC.
Whataburger, nice Whataburger. There you go.
Although not that good.
Really? Right. In-N-Out was better.
Right. So the point is, guys, is that the best teams in the NFL, the ones that have true success for sustained lengths of time, have a plan. They know what they're going to do, and they have a vision as to where they're going. So, for example, look at what Miami had done over the last few years. They had a few key pieces, and they traded away some of those key pieces to try and rebuild their team and get better picks, better versions of players in. And now we're all looking at them as saying they're legit at this point, right? They're legit at this stage.
Yep.
Same thing with Detroit.
Kev, how many playoff games has Derek Carr won though in his career?
No, but Alex, here's the thing, right? The Chiefs had some good players on your team over the years, and you never really won much with those players on your team. Then you got
AFC West.
No, you never really did really well. You were always kind of good, and then you kind of failed when it mattered most, right? Like, I'm not trying to belittle your team. You guys just won the Super Bowl. But
I didn't take it as belittling, but we had Alex Smith that was in the AFC West. They're an elite quarterback away from going to the Super Bowl. But what I was trying to say is, at some point, what Derek Carr's been with the Raiders for 8-9 years, and I think he got into the playoffs and they didn't win, or maybe twice.
When did Reed go to the Chiefs?
Huh?
When did Reed go to the Chiefs?
2013.
How long was Alex Smith with Andy Reid?
That whole time?
No. Like how long? Like when did Mahomes come in?
2017 was the year, but he didn't play. So 2013 to 2018.
So he had like 4 years of Alex Smith, right?
Yeah.
Now, as part of that, Reed was in a rebuild mode a little bit, where he was moving pieces around on the team to kind of build the team in his vision, and it was clear that the Chiefs were almost there, but not quite, right? I think that's a fair statement to make, right? Like we can kind of agree on that, right? So the point being is that the Raiders have not been in that position. The Raiders are not in a position right now where they have a clear vision. Andy Reid had a clear vision on that team. Staley, for all of his shortfalls, has what appears to be a pretty clear vision for the Chargers. And I think that's a good thing. McDaniels, I'm not convinced, has a clear vision for the Raiders, although I think it's clearer than what it has been in years past. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because then you're going to start see certain things kind of starting to tighten up and move in a uniform direction. But you need that direction. You need the captain to steer the ship towards a singular goal. That singular goal may fall short of the Super Bowl, but you need the captain, you need the guy to say that this is where you're going. Thank goodness there's pants. And
I get what you're saying, but I think with the amount of the Derek Carr was there, taking out the coaches just changes everything else. You have look, we spent 8 years of our draft capital building around this guy, and where has it gotten us? So I think at that point, regardless of getting a new coach, and I obviously think that McDaniels' vision, like I said, doesn't involve Derek Carr. But I understand why they parted ways with, because after this amount of time and what you've done, granted, if it worked out or not, spending all your draft capital elsewhere, then you have to at some point look in the mirror, I guess.
Alex, so let's look at kind of what the Chiefs did when you had Alex Smith. Did you build out your offensive line when you had Alex Smith?
Yeah, and they made more of it when they were a different team then, because they had Charles.
That wasn't my question.
2014, I don't think they had a single receiving wide receiver catch a receiving touchdown. So they changed. They didn't. I think over time built it. To say that they are, it's kind of an apples and oranges comparison, because
no,
they weren't like
Alex.
Weren't irrelevant. They made the playoffs a year with Alex. And Andy Reid.
I didn't say they didn't. My question was pretty narrowed in focus, right? Did they build out their offensive line in truth with Alex Smith?
Yeah.
I think that they had more misses than hits. I think they drafted poorly for the offensive line, and I think that that's the issue. And what you've done now when you have Mahomes is that you have a guy that can improvise and win you games because he can do the things that other guys can't. But I also do not believe that as a result of what you guys were doing, that you did not build out the offensive line the way that you've done with Mahomes. And I think that has a tremendous impact on the team. And I think that we saw, for example, in 2016, Captain, I'm going to kind of pull us all the way back to the Raiders from after making those comments about the Chiefs. And that is what you saw in 2016 with Derek Carr is the Raiders had a legit offensive line.
Pro Bowls all over that line.
Pro Bowl across the board.
It really was.
Incredible.
Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Donald Penn. Who was the right tackle that year? I'm missing my trivia. But yeah, they had at least 4 to 5 Pro Bowlers.
Right.
On that line.
So they had
Don't
5.
say Twitter Twinkies because Trent Brown was not all that in a biscuit.
Well, Bill thinks highly of him. Bill loves him.
In 2016, you had a Pro Bowl almost unilaterally across all starting positions on your offensive line. It's a fact. Like, they were that damn good. Like, they were that good as an offensive line. And as a result, you had a quarterback who is quasi-mobile, but was able to make good throws, play at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, MVP level.
Oh, I forgot about Kelechi Osemele.
Yes, well, Osemele was the main guy, right? He was like the legit main guy on that line overall. But my point is that when you have a legit offensive line for a quarterback to help protect them, you can then build off the run, build off the pass, and pivot in whichever direction your general vision for your team is. The Raiders had that when Carr was almost an MVP before he got hurt in that 2016 season, I believe it was. And what you've seen the Chiefs do now that they have their quarterback is they have now focused on the offensive line, and dividends are now paying out because you've won the Super Bowl. So anyways, guys, I think that's an interesting way to end off the show. We're going to start digging into each of our teams' positional needs and some of the other nitty-gritty components of the AFC West, because now that football's over, we need to fill out and obviously improve as an overall division, and we can go down the rabbit hole of all the different things that we want to see our teams do. Leave those questions that you would like us to cover in future episodes down below. Hit us up on Twitter. Go ahead and like and subscribe to each of our channels. And it really would not be a show without a captain's wheel. I mean, if we're really going to be honest, between having a captain's wheel and about at least a half dozen movie references, it really would not be a proper Wild Wild West podcast. And guys, until next week, and until we start digging into the deep dives into the AFC West, where the West side is the best side. Peace.